Mr. Lockwood, what is your first childhood memory?
My first childhood memory was Christmas time. I think I was about 9 years old, and my mom bought me a big light green 10-speed bike, and it was something I really wanted. But it was light green. It was like the coolest thing because it was bigger than all other kids' bikes, and I could go faster than they could.
Mr. Lockwood, what are some of the obstacles you have overcome in life?
Hmm. Wow, that's a great question. That's a long-winded question, but I'll try to shorten it up. I'm a product of a dad who did not necessarily want to be around his son. So my mom ended up divorcing him because he was domestically violent. I'm a product of the projects where most kids who came from the projects were looked down upon, but we were all smart. My mom tells me later when I taught at Pace Academy that she tried to put all her kids who were very smart in Pace Academy, and they told her that she had too many children. She had 4 at the time. And I ended up working at Pace Academy for 6 years, so it's sort of ironic that I couldn't get into Pace Academy, but I ended up teaching children at Pace Academy. Overcame physically when I was 4 years old. I almost died. I had asthma, and so that's a physical overcoming. And then I think just not having a lot of real role models, male role models, was very important. But God gave me my Boys Club director. His name is Terry Nelson, and he blessed me. So those would be a few.
Who is your inspiration?
Wow, wow, so many. I can start with my great grandfather. He's probably one of my inspirations. My great grandfather worked and owned 200 acres of land in North Georgia. We still have 100 and some of those acres of land still in our family. But he worked for 50 cents, like 50 cents an hour to make that happen. And so we have one of the largest farms, and still have one of the largest farms up in North Georgia. And so that's a great legacy for my great-grandfather. My mom is a hero for me in so many aspects. My mom went as a valedictorian of a high school class. She went to seminary school. She started 2 churches. And for most people who know anything about the South, women in general are not accepted as preachers and who carry the gospel. And so she not only started 2 churches, but has maintained a ministry for several years. I think my Boys Club director, Terry Nelson, is a hero for me because he has taken in so many boys, and you don't hear stories like this on the news. And so he stayed at the same Boys Club for 40 years. Think about that. One person staying somewhere and make an impact for 40 years. And so that's another hero. Probably from a historical standpoint of view, I love men like Frederick Douglass. I love men like Benjamin Mays, who was the president of Morehouse College. I love people certainly like Dr. Martin Luther King. And one of my current heroes is our new and current president, President Barack Obama. Not because of the color of his skin necessarily, but because of what he stands for, and that he wanted to make change for more people than just a few. So,
What kept you from getting in trouble in school when you were young?
the threat of my mom killing me. And so that would be probably one. Staying in the church, and of course my walk with Christ, although it was skittish at times, but we stayed in church a lot as a little boys and going to Sunday school. And I still stay in touch with the gentleman who actually was my Sunday school director, pastor of the church, because we were these black little kids going to this majority white church, and yet we always were in Sunday school. And my mom didn't go; she would make sure we went. So, yeah.
What is your fondest memory of working at Atlanta Youth Academy thus far?
Wow, oh man, that's a tough one, guys. Fondest memory. I've had so many great moments. I've had some challenges. Oh, let's see. I think, can I keep it in general terms? I think graduations are fun for me. I think graduations are probably the greatest. Whether it's kindergarten graduation, certainly my 8th grade graduations, but graduations. Our barbecue that we have that's put on by the board and the Friends of AYA. Those graduations are culminating moments for a certain level. Doesn't mean that you've gotten to high school and college, but that you've accomplished. And all of us did it together. It does not mean it's been easy. We've not always agreed, but it means that that person has accomplished something when you say, now you are a graduate. And quite frankly, it is very prideful for me to look at the graduates and say, you know what, you're part of a legacy now. You're part of the Carolina OEAs, the Quays, the Jamisas. There's so many kids we can begin to name. The Carlos. I mean, there's so many kids who come through our school, and that list keeps growing. So I would think graduations. Yeah.
What drew you to AYA, and what was it like when you first came?
Wow. You guys have heard me say some of this before. You know, I come from a school where I was assistant principal of a great school called Charles R. Drew Charter School. Tom Cousins had so much work and development into that. I was second in charge of a 700-member school, so there was no reason for me to leave. My office was about as big as this library, or a little bigger, and I had a wonderful opportunity to grow. But then God tapped on my heart and said, I want you to go work with Chuck Johnston. And what I found when I got here, when I said yes finally to God and to obeying Him, I probably wouldn't have done it if one of my parents had walked in the office that morning and said to me, and it's an interesting story, said to me, God said it's time to move. That person had been praying for me all half the night and said they had to come and tell me that. They walked in my office, said that, and walked back out. Didn't have a conversation with me at all. Didn't even know that I was talking to Mr. Johnston about possibly coming and moving. And I went from a 700-member school to, I think at that time it was 98 students. And a short story about that is there were at least 16 failures. There were windows out. There were kids who had been late at least 30 times. There were, I think, 40 kids who had been late at least 30 times in the school year. There was very little what I would call academic progress. And so I came at a very crucial time in Atlanta Youth Academy's history. And by God's grace, we were able to turn that ship around. And I've been very fortunate to be the only principal that's watched our kids graduate. Our first graduating class was my first year.
What was your first job?
My first job was as a boys club supervisor. I was 14 years old, and my boys club director chose me to actually be in charge of 18-year-olds who needed summer jobs, who were coming out of high school and going to college. And I was mayor of my boys club for 3 years. And so from 12, 13, and 14, I was the mayor of the boys club. So I got a chance to have says and go to meetings and speak at different places and all of that. We were supported by this group called the Harlan. Now you may not know the name Harlan, but you'll know something that they do. They're the ones who make all the checkbooks. And so when your parents and different people are writing checks, Harlan is the one famous in the South out here on I-20 who is a company that makes checks for businesses, individuals, etc. And so they supported the boys club, and I got to know them very well. So my first job was as a supervisor in the summer program over all the lunches, all that stuff. And I had like 8 people who worked up under me. I was 14 years old. So I thought it was pretty cool. I remember my first check was $247.
When did you first discover that you wanted to become a teacher?
It sort of was sort of funny. I think it was God's providence. At the time, I thought it was by default. And what I mean by that is, I thought when I first went to college, I actually was a pre-med major. I loved to read, and I said I was going to be like a pre-med major / history major. But I took a class called organic chemistry. I did okay in the academic work, but I did okay.